Verizon writes off $5.8 billion on enterprise as sales slow. Story out of Bloomberg. Todd Shields, the author. Antonia Mufarech. All right, so Verizon writing down the value of its business services division by $5.8 billion, a sign of the company's declining enterprise operations and continually ailing landline business. The wireless carrier said in a filing Wednesday that the impairment charge was due to an overall decline in demand for its business group, as well as continuing competitive and macroeconomic pressure. As a result of the write-down, Verizon said the balance of its business unit was $1.7 billion at the end of 2023. The decline is tied to the telco giant's legacy wireline operations, landline or fixed line communication services to businesses through copper or fiber wires. This segment has steadily seen demand drop over the past 2 decades as Verizon's mobile business service has grown. Moose, jump in.
So a lot of people have a misconception about what exactly this means, but let me give you guys an idea about what exactly this is. So we're talking not just about, POTS lines, plain old telephone service, right? We're also talking about legacy VPN. We're talking about T1 circuits, right? Like backups, old school backup circuits.
Old wireline.
That's
what
old stuff, right?
Yeah.
Copper, right? This just shows the massive decline in legacy technology, which is good in the sense, right? Because more and more customers are now upgrading to SD-WAN solutions, right? They don't need IP sec tunnels and all this other nonsense, right? They just get everything through the clouds now, right? So yes, Verizon is the first to write down, but they were not, in 2024, I should say, because really Lumen is in crisis mode. Mm-hmm. Lumen is actually in the brink of bankruptcy because they have so much debt, right? And a lot of the reason why they have so much debt is because clearly they haven't been able to do this digital transformation that people have been talking about for many years, right? And what I mean by that is going from legacy services to over the top or SD-WAN, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's not shocking to me. Needed to happen. It was going to eventually happen. It seems like Verizon's the first domino to fall, but they're not going to be the only domino to fall in 2024. I mean, look at Altice, right? We didn't even talk about this yet, but they huge decrease in the rack rate pricing for fiber and for cable. That just shows the times right now. I'm anticipating that they're going to be acquired sometime, soon. There's no way that they're going to be continuing to do this situation, and they're not profitable right now. But
they got problems. They really do.
Verizon's, the first to admit that, hey, we need to write down this. Basically, what that means is that it's not as valuable. But anyways, go ahead.
B, you want to jump in?
I think Moose articulated it really well. And I agree. Well done, Moose. I don't have a whole lot to add to that because he nailed it. Verizon was the first, but they definitely won't be the last. This is it sounds like just decommissioning of old stuff. They were forthright. They got it out there. I don't think this is anything that,
transition is.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it is. It doesn't mean the Verizon business is the sky is falling and all of a sudden, they're not growing. I don't think that's what it is at all. I think that this has been something that's been ongoing for several years now. And despite that, you've still had a profitable side of the business with respect to Verizon business. You've still seen them report growth in wireless. You've still seen them report growth in fixed wireless access and Fios business and all that other kind of stuff. Same thing in consumer. Yes, I know they've had issues with consumer phone ads. I get it, but there's still been growth. There's still been growth in Fios and consumer. There's still been growth in fixed wireless. I think they'll be fine. This is just a transition in technologies, just like Moose said.
All right, let me get Dennis in here.
The only thing I just want to say is we've all agreed on this panel, whenever we talked about enterprise before, that enterprise really is the bread and butter for these telco companies as far as where the monetization is concerned, or future monetization growth is concerned. So I do think it's a little concerning that Verizon's seeing sales slow / they're reducing the value in that space, because right now I know they're decomming a lot of things, but with the investments in One Fiber, I would expect growth to offset any losses in business.
I think that's a different business, though. I think technically that you're talking about MCI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's technically different.
And also one other thing, legacy services are so much more expensive than the new SD-WAN offerings. Just to give you an idea of how cheap they are compared to the legacy, it's like a reduction of 85%.
Moose, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
In your humble opinion, how realistic is it to convert 90% of these operations to modern mobility services in some way, shape, or form?
It's not mobility services. We're talking about a wireline offering, period, here.
Okay, in terms of a transition to, like, fiber optic, different methodology of solutions, like, maybe some of this is hospitals, maybe some of this agency, enterprise, government, maybe it just needs updating.
Do you guys remember the press release that happened in the second quarter from Verizon that they got one of the big federal agencies? I believe it was the CIA or something, or FBI.
They nailed the FAA, they nailed the Navy, they nailed Marines. They've hit like everything.
Right. So that is a digital transformation.
Right.
And that is significantly cheaper than what they had before. Significantly
it
cheaper.
Requires an input investment initially, but just operationally, it's more efficient and lower in cost.
It's lower in cost for the customer, but it's worse off for the business because you're not as profitable in the same thing. That's the same thing that's happening with AT&T. Because
I was going to say, where does AT&T fall into this? Because I know they're going through similar transitional things.
Yeah. Keep in mind, AT&T has more of this problem. They have more legacy than anybody else.
True.
So it's very simple situation.
You gotta imagine there's going to be a field day at earnings. The questions that are going to be coming in. Like, expect Eugene to probably rub this in Verizon's face on January 26th or whatever.
What in the God's name is he going to be able to say?
I swear, I guarantee you he says some dumb shit about it. I guarantee.
I mean, yeah, and what is he going to say?
Our competitors have to deal with blah blah blah. We're just pulling ahead.
That's because T-Mobile doesn't have any enterprise customers. They don't have any sales to write off.
He's gonna say it. I'm telling you.
Whatever. I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a necessary evil. To Moose's point,
right?
Newer technologies definitely cheaper than the older technologies. That's the way it is. But these write-offs, all this kind of stuff, all of the legacy carriers are going to go through this. Verizon just did it first.
How much is left in order to get this all cleaned up and moved on from?
It's going to be years in the making, probably. In my estimation,
this is a big, long. People have been theorizing that it's going to take at least until 2030.
2030.
And that's like,
what's your estimation on that?
Barely scratching the surface, guys.
2030, B?
To be honest with you, I really don't know. But it's not going to be quick. Because the carriers, none of them can focus just on decom. They've got to continue to build out the new stuff and maintain the new stuff. Because decom doesn't really earn you money. It's a expense. So nobody's really going to focus on that, at least in my opinion. Based on what I know about businesses, just regular business 101, you just can't focus on this stuff. It's going to take time. I don't know if it's going to take until 2030. I'm really not sure. But I do know this is not something that's going to be heavily prioritized over, the initiatives that, the carriers want to try to get done with respect to growth and, profitability and trying to get the new stuff out there. So
can I ask clarification? I just want to ask for clarification, though. In the article, it says the enterprise sales are slowing, though. Like,
that would be the macroeconomics, the competition. They cited those items.
Right, but what I was going to say was, to me, that doesn't make sense, because as you're getting these people onto, even if you're losing some money on the base service when you transition them over to a better technology, there should be additional enterprise related services now that you're able to monetize once that connection becomes established. Like,
I think some are just they're just terminating services and they're not taking anything else.
Yeah, the sales of T1s are slowing. I think that's what it's trying to say. And so because of that, the value of that infrastructure is being written off because it's in the process of being decommissioned, because sales of those older technologies are continuing to slow.
okay,
Nobody's buying that stuff anymore is what I interpreted the article
So
to be able
again,
to try to
it
say.
continues to increase the cost of operation. You're selling it less, therefore you're generating less revenue from it, but you're still maintaining it.
Yep.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
All right.
it seems like a losing proposition to me.
Yeah, so I mean, write it off
Mhm.
so that you can get it off the books now. That helps to speed up the decommissioning process and all that kind of thing. You get it out there before you have the earnings to allow the market to do what it's going to do. It's going to overreact. That's what it does. Take the hit now.
By the
And
way,
then when you get there,
this was a 5-year review process. This was not something that was done on a whim. They
yeah,
had
it
been
wasn't.
studying this for years, so like they were ready to make this move.
Yep. But I
Yeah.
mean, of course, the market does what it does. It tends to be a little jumpy. So I mean, it's going to do what it's going to do. But I imagine when quarterly earnings release, I think it's next week, if I'm not mistaken. Sneed, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
But I'm sure fourth quarter numbers will still be
I think
good
they're gonna
enough
be-
they're going to be good
Yeah.
enough to. I got Verizon on the come up.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have a great Q4, and this is just gonna be one of those things that they'll probably mention at earnings and just be like, "Hey, look, we ran this study. We calculated this, that. This is what we're doing moving forward, and we're a better business for it."
Yep.
What else are they gonna say? What up, EM?
Yo,
Go ahead,
it,
have at it, bro.
I was just gonna say, I think an important thing to note is that all of the industry analysts still have Verizon as a net positive and continuing to increase their what's their like buy rating or whatever
Yeah.
that they use, that metric that they use, despite
Mm-hmm.
this
Well,
announcement.
well, let me put it to you like this: if you are a true investor and you've been buying Verizon shares prior to this news, let's say Verizon pulls back 5%. You're buying more Verizon.
Yep.
Like what literally changed in the last 24 hours in terms of the Verizon business? You weren't buying Verizon because of T1 lines. You weren't buying shares of Verizon because of telephone lines, hard lines. You were buying them because of broadband growth and margins and revenues. I
Yeah,
don't think any of that has changed in terms of their core business.
yeah. And the other thing that's important to note, and this is unanimous across every telco, is that as you have telecom companies decomming copper, abandoning it, saying, "Hey, we're done," the cost of the still existing copper continues to rise, because then that whoever they're partnered with for that last mile has to maintain that old infrastructure, so they end up charging an extremely high rate for that service. So it's in every telco's best interest to follow in Verizon's footsteps here and just decom and get rid of it.
Facts.